Hello and welcome to this video tutorial series, Getting Started with Gluware. If you're taking the test drive, you'll be able to follow along using the instance that's set up for you. If you're interested in taking the test drive, go to gluware.com/test-drive. In this video, we're going to highlight how to get started using Device Manager, including how to add devices, run device discovery, look at capture configuration, logs, and much more. So let's get started. Here I am. Gluware leverages a web-based client user interface that connects to your Gluware instance. My Gluware instance is here at demo.gluware.com. I'm signing in with my user credentials. It is a multi-user system. And another quick tip is that in the lower right-hand corner, you see the version of Gluware you're signing into. Here I am at version 5.0.62. This is the maintenance 1 release on Gluware 5.0. So let's get signed in. So here we are signed into Gluware, and Gluware is driven by a left-hand menu. So if I scroll over to the left, you can see the menu selections here to navigate through the applications. We're going to be using in this video Device Manager. So just on the left-hand menu, navigate in and click Device Manager. You can also click directly into the Devices view or the Sites view. We're not going to do this at this point. But a couple quick things about the left-hand nav menu. If mine doesn't look exactly like yours, there's a couple reasons. One is it is customizable in terms of the order, so you can switch around the order and put it in the way that you like to have things. Second is that you can drag and drop things onto the More label, and then those items would be shown in this drop-down if you expand it or not. One other quick note is that your settings are here at the bottom, where you can access your user, your org, and your global settings. So that's kind of the basic navigation. And again, for this particular video, we're going to be using the Device Manager app, so we are navigated into the right application. A couple other quick things is that, as I mentioned, Gluware is a multi-user system. I am signed in. If I click on my upper right-hand corner profile, I see my name, my role. It is role-based access control, my username. I can edit my profile, preferences, sign out. One quick note on preferences is that in this quick float over of preferences, you can enable show solution names or hide solution names. If you hide solutions names, that does affect your left-hand menu where you don't see the full name of the app. You just get the icon of the app. If for some reason you didn't like that expanded menu, for just ease of use for a new user, especially and while I'm using doing the tutorial, I will keep the names on. Next note is in this upper right-hand corner, you're going to see a drop-down up here. Gluware is a multi-tenant system. We call our tenant organizations. So you can see I have numerous organizations I can navigate into. There's lots of reasons to create different orgs, but basically in a given organization will be a set of devices that you administrate in the same way. So maybe it's a group of users, or it's a location like North America, but basically, or you could have a test org and a production org. Again, there's many different reasons to have different orgs or have it multi-tenant. I will be using a tenant called test-drive-pod1. This is one of the pods that is available for use in the test drive. So that being covered, now let's take a look at this main Device Manager screen. So looking at the Device Manager app here, you see two main panes, a top pane and a bottom pane. In several of the Gluware applications, including Device Manager, Device Explorer makes up the bottom pane. And then as you click into devices, you're going to see another pane open up on top to view various properties about the devices that you're looking at. So let's get started with the first step generally you're doing as a user related to Device Manager is adding devices. So there are 4 ways to add devices. One way is manually adding each device. So you can click on Add Device here, or there's also an Add Device icon here. When you click on Add Device, you're going to give it a name like New Device, hit Create, and it's going to open up that top dialog where you're going to have to define how Gluware connects to the device. We have the name, the IP address, and the credentials, and we're able to connect. That's essentially all you need to do from a data entry standpoint, but then Gluware will discover the majority of the rest of the details about that device. Since this is just an example, I will close out of this dialog and I will select this and delete it out. So I'm not going to be adding it manually, so I hit confirm. So that's one option, is to add manually. And the second option is to import. Import is very handy because it is typical that you're going to have a list of devices that are available to you, be it a lab, be it production. And so you're going to want to use from the action bar right here. And by the way, this view or the bar on the top of Device Explorer pane on the top right here is made up of views delineated by the V and actions. So all of these icons are actions that you can take. And we're going to start with an action that is the import devices. So we'll click on import devices. And now I'm prompted to drop a CSV file to import. I may have that file. I may need a file, or I may need to format a file into the required format for import. If you need the template, just click download CSV template. It will download onto your machine, and then you can open the template. It will open that in your CSV viewer, in my case Excel, and I have required field name, then optional fields like name, description, management state, environment, IP address, username, password. The more you fill out here, the less you have to enter in the UI. However, all that's required is a name. And then ultimately, we're going to need an IP address and credentials to be able to connect and perform discovery. Basically, put your devices in this template and then add them in. So I have my devices in this template. I will drag and drop my CSV file in. So I just drag and drop the file over and let go. It's importing my file. And I have 9 devices that have successfully been imported, and I hit OK. Here we are with the very basic information that was in that CSV file. Name, IP address. I did have additional information that I wanted maintained, which is the management state and the environment. Management state is, if you double click in and look at it, you can set your management state. You may have unmanaged devices, which you're not actively doing configuration management on. You may have devices flagged as inventory only. So in my case, since I'm demonstrating all the Gluware functionality, I'm going to leave it in a managed state. Environment is also important. Environment mostly comes into play with network RPA, where there are test workflows and production workflows. And test should be used on test devices, and production should be used on production devices. However, in environments that are small, and you want to test the whole cycle from test to production, especially in demonstration environments, you can label the devices as production and test and not have any of those limitations. But a forward tip is, if you are having trouble running a network RPA workflow, you might be running a production workflow against environments, devices that are in the test environment, and so on and so forth. I have my devices added here. Now, the next step of what I want to do is I can select one or more devices. A way to select all devices is Control A. So I've selected all 9 devices. And now I'm going to run what is called a device discovery. From the action panel, the magnifying glass with the question mark is called Discover Devices, and I'm going to kick that off. So as soon as I click on that icon to discover devices, you're going to see that the discovered status they go from being assigned to a queue to, when you see the dots, these are all executing. Gluware can execute many discoveries in parallel. It really just depends on your environment, what you've set up. We have a distributed environment, so it really depends on your environment how many concurrently can run. But at this point, all 9 are running concurrently. And so when they're running, you can pick any one of these devices and double click. And up on the top menu, we've already seen this detailed view of the devices. But over to the right on the view panel here, I can click on the logs. I can float over the latest log, or I can double click in. If you double click, you're going to open it up full screen, and you get a full log view. In just minutes here, or probably not even a full minute, we've interrogated all of these devices, and just looking at this one log here, I have my timestamps difference of what occurred. So roughly 52 seconds to fully interrogate this device. But this is where you see the details of what Gluware is doing. So when Gluware is executing it, we're running a series of commands to extract data from the devices. Gluware first figures out what operating system it's talking to. Is it Cisco iOS? Is it Juniper Juno? Is it Arista? Is it Palo Alto? Whatever it may be. And then it runs a series of commands to then extract data out of that device. So running a show version, running a show hardware, running a show run, and show ARP, show LLDP, show CDP. It's looking at all this data, and you can see here is where it identifies it as a Cisco iOS, and then it kicks off collecting discovery data, and you'll see all the discovery data. That highlighted in green here, what you're seeing is actually responses from the device. So this is coming right from the device. Gluware is capturing all this data. We wrap it in data modeling, and then we're able to perform regex and other operations out on it to extract out details that are stored. I want to comment also is that you can hit show settings on your log, and you can change parameters. You can search your log. You can mark it as case sensitive. I can change the left-hand bar to be, time passed, time stamp, line number, log. I do like time passed, so I see how fast and how responsive something is. I happen to keep it on that, but there are options for you when you're looking at the settings of your log, and all of this is fully downloadable from the Gluware server down onto your client machine that you're working from. Okay, so now we've seen how we can add devices manually. We've imported devices, and we've successfully executed discovery, and we've even looked at the logs of that interaction of all that data collection. A couple other things to comment on here on the view panel on the top is that this view here is the config view. So one of the things Gluware will do for you is every time we rediscover a device or execute a snapshot, we will re-update the configuration. We'll pull the current config and store it for you here, and you can download it from Gluware. A couple of these other views here are related to our integration with Cisco and NIST, and so we're going to be covering those in another video. So let's move on to the next the other two ways in which you can add devices in Device Explorer. So I'm going to close out of this top pane view. From Device Explorer here on the bottom, another option on the right-hand side is to execute a network discovery. So I'm going to click on Network Discovery, and it's going to bring up a dialog here on the top. So the premise of network discovery is that Gluware uses a seeded device. It can be in your inventory, or you can specify it here. And then Gluware interrogates that device, looking at what you're specifying we can look at with ARP, CDP, LLDP. So we're looking at layer 2 neighbors, and then we interrogate all of those neighbors, and then we proceed on through the network. So we're kind of crawling the network intelligently. Instead of using like an IP scan or something like that, we're actually using ARP or CDP or LLDP tables, and then you can have an exhaustive search, or you can limit the depth in terms of network hops away. So if I know I have like a 4-tier network, but let's say I only want to discover the core devices, I could leave this at 1. If I have a 4-tier network and I want to discover all of them, I could say exhaustive, right? So you can specify that difference there. With this particular dialog, I have, I'll say use selected device. So there's my hub 1 is selected here. So I'm going to say use selected device, and that I'm noting that the initial device uses one or more proxies, right? So that's okay. And so basically with that enabled, I'll just do ARP based, and I'll run discovery. So upon running discovery, switch over to the running view here, and I can start to see the discovery as it's running, and now it's completed. This is a relatively small lab, and so it's already completed discovery, but basically it's interrogating all of the devices that are connected, and you can see all of those here, and then it's identifying a few other devices. And in my environment, I happen to know that those are compute devices connected to it, and that they are not, discoverable. But I can see that the Cisco devices that this particular router is connected to, including spokes 1, 2, 3, and 4, are already known in my inventory. But basically, from your discovery, this is very useful for numerous reasons. You could identify unknown devices connected to your network, and especially when you're conducting mergers and acquisitions. But if there were unknown devices, I could select those devices, and then I could import the selection into my inventory. In this case, I don't need to do that. I just wanted to highlight that one of the main ways at that, larger networks especially, they're going to execute a network discovery, discover those devices that are known to be connected, and import those into inventory. A lot of our customers run this periodically to discover new devices and ensure that they know the device is connected to their network. They might go through an exercise of all these various devices that are coming up as errored or pending, that they would click into the logs and look into the details about exactly what those are. Okay, so that's the third way in that we can add devices manually. We can import a list of devices. We can execute a network discovery. And the final way to add devices is via API. So I have another tab open here that has our API docs. So from your main Gluware instance, you just add a API-docs with a closed hash on that, and then you'll open up your Gluware API documentation. So here you can see the API calls to, number one, if you're adding, you're going to be updating devices. And if you are pulling devices out of Gluware, you're going to be retrieving devices or potentially searching devices. But you certainly can interact with Gluware via the API to sync an external source of truth. Because Gluware is connecting to your network, it has the ability to understand what is real and what is connected to the network, where if you have a CMDB or an ITSM or some external tracking method of your devices, usually those other mechanisms don't have the ability to go and check the network in real time. And so if some external system is the source of truth, then you want to synchronize between Gluware and that source of truth, and you can do that via API calls. A few other things to note here is that here in Device Manager, you see various columns. I just want to kind of quickly comment that you can hit this cog here and turn on or turn off column views. So if my system or my view looks different from one you're seeing, you can turn on or off those views. Another nice feature is right from this dialog here, you can move things around. So let's say I wanted my IP address right next to my name. I could just drag it up there, and then I have my name and then my IP address. You also can move things around this way. You can drag and drop here. There's also numerous ordering, searching, and filtering. We're going to cover that in another video. Then as you scroll to the right here, you're going to see all the data we've collected. So name was a user inputted parameter. Host name was discovered from the device. In this case, it's pretty much the same thing. But what we're extracting out is we learn the vendor. We are learning what operating system it's running. We are extracting out the operating system version, the SKU, the serial number, the uptime for most vendors. We don't pull that out for all vendors at this time. Gluware has over 40 operating systems. You can have your timestamps and who did what in the system and the last activity they've taken. And then as I get over to the right, I have a bunch of columns that are related to Cisco and NIST integration around advisories, and we're going to get into that in an upcoming video. This is really the primary thing that I wanted to show you in this video of getting started with this Device Explorer in terms of how to add devices and then how to look at that data. There are a couple more points I want to make real quick in that. One is right from here, you can export out your devices or your data. So you would select one or more devices. I'll do a Control A again and hit the export. And just to show you here that it's generated out a report, I can double click on that CSV and see that Gluware has exported out my inventory that way. Another thing you can do is you can execute a report. So with each of the apps, Gluware has a designated default report that can be controlled in your Data Explorer. but I can execute whatever is the default report right from here as well. If that's something you're commonly doing, is extracting data in that way, you can run the report. Now that the data is in the system for your inventory, this data is also available to the other applications. Your inventory will sync to be used in Drift and Audit and OS Manager and Config Modeling, but also all of this data will be available in the Dashboard app and the Data Explorer app, and we will get into those in further videos. So with that, this concludes the initial video on Device Manager. I hope you're following along with the test drive. We look forward to you continue learning more about how to get started with Gluware. Thank you.